Hey guys, thanks so much for logging in online. Again, I'm not behind the computer, but I get to hang out on this side, so that's exciting for me. And thank you for logging on faithfully. If you can go on and share this and actually share every single week that Pastor Spencer goes live, I know it'd be a great blessing to him. A lot of this content is absolutely life-changing, and it's free. He really is going through a whole book for us in a month. So you can start telling people that you read 12 books a year at least. And no, okay. So it's really exciting, and I'm blessed that I get to do this, and Pastor Spencer's enjoying the sun while we're getting more snow this morning. Well, let's get into it. Last week we started covering what was called The Coaching Habits. It's a phenomenal book. I'd encourage everyone to go and get it. The premise of the book is really simple, is we have an opportunity to develop people, and a lot of development, unfortunately, is done by us doing everything, and we don't have to actually develop anybody in that instance. We just talk a lot, do a lot, and we become a bottleneck. But on the flip side, if we can develop people through questioning, then we can actually see development in them so they can stand on their own 2 feet, so we can be accomplished in things, and we can see forward progress in everything that we're doing. So I'd encourage you to get the book. I've listened to it a few times now, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So I want to help break the cycle of bottlenecks, of time sucking, and the last one of just feeling disconnected by doing everyday mundane work. So the 7 questions, I'll go through the first 4 with you real quick, and then we'll catch back up on question number 5. The first question is really easy, and that's the Kickstarter question. Instead of having 30 minutes of small talk, just get right into it with the Kickstarter question of this, is what is on your mind? And you'll find that people will love to open up. They love to know that they're cared about, they're valued, and what they're going through is important. The next question, question number 2, is called the awe question, or and what else? And we've been encouraged to ask the awe question anywhere from 3 to 5 times until you really kind of hit the end of the road with the question. And it's powerful because the more you ask, the more clarity people will start to get, the more of a picture that they'll start to paint. And as they start to paint that picture, we can figure out where the development needs to take place. The third question is called the focus question. And that is, what is the real challenge for you here? Not what's the real challenge, because we can go in 100 different directions with what's going on and what's in the way and start blaming things. But when we ask the question, what is the real challenge for you here, that changes the whole ball game. It makes people look inside at what's going on with them, and we can find sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's strategic lack, sometimes it's just they don't know what is really happening, and we can help bring clarity to the situation. Question 4, the foundational question, and this is really where everything starts to shift, and that is what do you want? The more you ask this question, the author says, the more you'll find out people don't actually know what they want at all. They just have needs, and they'll ask and ask and ask and ask, and they'll try to find 100 different ways. But this question really helps people figure out what they need from us, not just what they need, but what they want, and we can lay a foundation and start to bring real development to them. And now we get into new teaching. Amen. And if you didn't get any of that last week, we went more in depth on those first 4 questions. And you can go right back. I'm sure if you click right under here, it'll say Dr. Micheal Spencer. Make sure you hit subscribe, but also make sure you click on that. And last week's video is the first 4 questions on how we can start to coach and develop people that we're working with. Now, the 5th question is powerful, and I love this question. And this question goes like this. It's called the lazy question. And it's called the lazy question because it takes the work off of us and it puts it on other people. Let's practice this question together. Ready? What do you want from me? Let's try it again. Ready? What do you want from me? We can ask that emphasizing 100 different syllables and however we want, but it's still the same focus. What is it that you want from me? What do you need me to do? It's the lazy question because it gets the other person to propose a solution, helping you avoid creating one. If we create the solution, then we've just come back to the same problem that we actually haven't developed anybody, but we've had a 10-minute conversation with just time loss. And it goes back to sucking our time, one of the big three things and the cycles that will kill our progress. We can ask it like this. We can ask, well, how can I help you? We can ask more bluntly, what do you want from me? But it needs to be asked. And one tip that we need to be prepared to respond with, one thing that we need to make sure we have in our back pocket is this, is I can't do that, but fill in the blank with the rest of your answer. People are going to ask you to take care of the whole problem. They're going to ask you to solve it. They're going to ask you to be the savior of the world. They're going to ask you to do all of their work. And I don't blame them, because if you're willing to do it, then they've just won and you've completely lost. You're doing someone's job who's supposed to report to you, and they don't have to do it at all. So you're doing two jobs. Congratulations. Now you're backing into time sucking and feeling disconnected because you're doing menial work that you're not actually assigned to do. So when we start to say no, it's huge. But if we say no, we better make sure we're listening, not just pacifying and looking like we're turning an ear, but we're truly listening to what they want from us, what they say that they really need from us. And it's cool. There's something called the Karpman drama triangle. And this triangle is really interesting because it says we tend to shift between three roles, and all of these roles create an issue. It's really, really interesting. Number one, the first role in this triangle is called the victim, where we'll start to blame others and take no responsibility for our situation. Anybody ever do that before? I think we've all probably been on that side of the triangle at one point or another, where we play the victim. But we know as believers, we don't have to be victims. We're victors in all things because of the Christ that lives inside of us. So I don't believe it as followers of Christ, as business owners and ministry leaders, that we should ever fall on this side of the triangle of victims. Because ultimately, feeling bad for ourselves will never solve anything. And we have a gigantic portion of a generation that just feels bad for themselves and what they feel like they were shorted on, but they'll never have victory in life by living on that side of the triangle. We might feel helpless and will attract rescuers. When you're a victim, you're going to attract rescuers. And I like rescuers. I think they're good people. But rescuers don't actually solve anything either. I'm going to skip the persecutor and go right to the rescuer. Rescuers, y'all are great people and you have an amazing heart. Congratulations. You truly love people. But sometimes you love them too much and they never hear truth. Sometimes you tie 13 life preservers around them and they never learn to swim on their own. Being a rescuer is a great thing at times, but it's a horrible lifestyle to allow someone to come to you at. Because now you're their savior. Now you are the answer to everything that they're going through. They don't have to rest on a savior. They don't have to learn how to swim. They don't have to learn how to do anything. Because you will always be there to make sure that they never drown. And they're always above water. I think it's good when people go underwater sometimes. Sometimes people need to go underwater so they can learn where they lack, so they can learn what they need to develop. It's not good to let them die. But sometimes it's good to let them bob underwater for a second and realize that life needs development. Rescuers believe that they're indispensable and they try to fix everything. You can try to fix everything, and I think we can probably all attest to this. We've probably all done this before. You can try to fix everything in someone's life, and you can fix everything in someone's life. But guess what? They're going to do the same thing over and over and over again because they've come to realize that they have a rescuer in their life and that you'll never let them drown. Sure, you're indispensable to them. But guess what? Their life won't amount to much. And maybe you can fix everything, but really is fixing everything, but them not being able to swim, is that really fixing everything? No, not at all. And it's not creating a leader. What happens is others will find you meddlesome and you'll feel exhausted. Other people will think that you're just a gossip and you love to be a part of everything, and you get to be exhausted. You don't get to focus on your own work. You get to focus on everybody else. And silently, a lot of people are sick of you being in everyone's business. In short, jumping in to do everything doesn't make you actually helpful at all. Yes, we need to throw lifesavers. Yes, we need to help people. Yes, we need to be there when they struggle, but you can't be there every time they struggle, because then you are the answer. And they never learn and are never developed. And then we go back to the vicious cycles of time sucking and bottlenecks and feeling like we're disconnected from everything because we're just there to help that same person 100 times. And the goal of what we're doing here is to develop people, right? Yeah. Real leaders develop people. They don't just pacify. They don't hold hands. They develop people to accomplish mighty things. Remember last week we talked about the fact that the greatest measure of leadership is what happens to the organization when you're not there. So as a rescuer, if you're not there, guess what? The whole ship is going down. Mm-hmm. We can't lead like that because the whole ship is going to sink. And you weren't really a great leader at all. Maybe you built something great. Our measure of leadership, remember, it's not the bank account, it's not the size of the building, it's not even the size of the congregation. It's what happens when we're removed. Because all of those things are diminishing assets over time. But if people arise and people are developed, it will only grow. And that's the goal. The third side of the triangle right in the middle is called the persecutor. You act as if you're superior and blame others for poor results. You end up micromanaging and being responsible for everything again. So when we go back to the question of what do you want from me, we can fall into one of these three sections. It's really easy to fall into helping and being the victim. It's really easy to fall into the persecutor, and it's easy to fall in the rescuer, but it's also easy for the person to fall into one of those three. And we can identify where they are. We can identify, okay, they're playing the victim. Okay, they're blaming everything and they're micromanaging, they're a persecutor. Or we can realize that they're just a rescuer and we have to break them out of the rescuer. And they probably have a great heart. They're probably one of the sweetest people, one of the most genuine people you know. And they don't see an issue with what they're doing. But what they're doing is keeping people as babies and never allowing them to grow into their teenage years, into adulthood, in their maturity level. There's questions we can ask to break down this triangle so we can help people break out of one of these three. Number one, it forces the other person to make a clear, considered request. That question that we ask, what do you want from me? It makes them ask something very clear. It's not blaming, it's not persecuting, it's not rescuing. No, what is it specifically that you want? It makes them really consider, right? Instead of just talking and talking and talking and emotional, it makes people step back and like, what do I actually want? What could they actually provide for me? And what it does too is it removes us from trying to jump in and offer a solution that might backfire. I know as our staff, we're not allowed to tell people what to do, which I love. We tell someone to go and leave their husband, and they leave their husband, guess what? Now when they're unhappy with their decision, they're not mad at themselves. They're mad at you, they're mad at the church, and they're mad at God. We get to put the solution. What do you want from me? What do you want? How can I help you? How can I help you develop? What is it that you want from me? Now, people are going to start to ask for solutions because that's why they came to you. They came to you probably because you're smart. Maybe they came to you just because you're a gossip and they know you'll lend an ear. But I'm going to assume they came to you because you're smart, you're a great, effective leader. And they know you can have a good answer. But remember, your good answer won't develop somebody. Now, if you haven't developed them for performance, you'll need to give answers. Like if you've done no onboard training, if I have a small group leader that comes to me, hey, I don't know where to meet. If I ask them 38 questions, I'm not going to help. But if I give them clear guidelines first, and then they come to me the next time, okay, now I can develop this conversation. First time, they need performance coaching. But as we get into this, we need coaching for development. And that's what we get to do. People say, well, what do you think I should do? Or how do I fill in the blank? we have to resist the answer. We can't just, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. Because we didn't actually win. We didn't develop. What we can say is, well, I have some ideas, but can I hear your thoughts first? I got a couple good ideas, but what do you think? What do you think is the best solution? And they might come right back on it. But what we can do is we can go back to the second question of, and what else? Well, I have a couple ideas, but what do you think? Well, I think we could do this and this, but I'm not really sure if that's a good answer. Well, what else do you think would work? Oh, what else? And just keep mining, because you'll be amazed at what people have inside of them. I just asked one of the young men that work in the office as an intern with me to come up with something to help develop our groups and have more camaraderie and all that. Just came up with a phenomenal idea. I credit that to development and what's inside of him. And we'll do it. And you know what? People are going to say, wow, that was a great idea. Youth pastors. No, that wasn't me. That was phenomenal what was inside of that young man. But it had to be developed. We have to develop people. And we have to pull answers out of them. So that's question number 5, the lazy question. What do you want from me? Now, the 6th question, I love this, and it might be a little whited out for you guys on the backside. But the 6th question is powerful. It's the strategic question. And we have to ask this because people don't realize we have so much time. And if we say yes to something, we're really saying no to something else. It's funny when people are, well, I really like doing this, but I just don't have time for it anymore. Can we just be adults about things in the future? Can we stop saying we don't have time for things and saying it's shifted in our priority list? It's not that we don't have time. It's that it's not a priority to us any longer. You know, what's important to us, we do because we make time, because it's a priority in our heart. It's not that we don't have time. It's that it's not a priority any longer to us. And we need to help people understand this by the strategic question of, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Because I know a lot of people that will say yes to everything and on accident say no to everything as well. So this question, we need to learn to say yes slowly, and we need to teach people to say yes slowly. We need to ask questions like, why are you asking me? Why is this so urgent? This buys time to get information. This buys time, and we need to teach people to ask these questions so they're not inundated with things to do. This buys time to get information and forces the other party to consider the request more deeply. That's a win. What we need to do as well when we're asking people, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to, is we need to learn to separate people from the task. A lot of the times, we have a hard time saying no to things because we see the people in the task as the same. But the people in the task are completely different. Just because I'm saying no to the task does not mean I'm saying no to the person. But many times we can't say no because we think that they're the same and we don't want to reject people. Real leaders love people. That's why we've excelled. That's why you are where you're at. But if we always keep people and tasks together, we'll say yes to everything and get nothing accomplished. A great way to do this, and a great way as you're coaching somebody, is to get them to write down the task on a piece of paper and say, I'm afraid I have to say no to this. Teach them to do this. You do this as well when you're coaching them, when you're developing. I'm afraid, I know the last question I asked was, what do you want from me? And I wrote down the request. I'm afraid I can't do this. I have to say no to this. Then we're not saying no to the person. We've clearly separated the person and the task. We've written it out. It's extremely easy. It's clear what we're rejecting. And you don't have to feel bad. You don't have to feel obligated to say yes. You don't have to feel like you're a bad person. You don't have to feel like you don't love people. It's really simple. Now, there's another book that the author references called Playing to Win. And this was written by Martin and Lafley. And they break down strategy into 5 interrelated questions. And you can use these to crystallize what you're committing yourself to, and we can teach people to learn what they're committing themselves to. Ready? The first question we can ask is, what is our winning aspiration? Like, how can we tell if we actually won? We just had a little bit of a conversation about this in our staff meeting. If we send this survey, what is our win? Are we even going in the right direction for this? I thought that was a great question that was asked by Carla. What is our winning aspiration? We need to know the impact and the outcomes of what we're seeking to achieve, or else we can say we're doing something, we can feel good about doing something. I feel like we do this as the church, not this church, the church all the time. We do things, but for what? Because we've done them for the last 50 years? Or because there's something that adds to the vision and the goal that we're going at right now in this season, this time. For business, we can do the same thing. I think if we start to really look and strategically ask the question, what am I winning right now? If it doesn't add to our vision, then why are we doing it? If this doesn't fit into our goals, why are you even trying it? That first question is so good. What's the winning aspiration? And when we say yes slowly, we can ask these questions and really start to mine out the information. And when we develop people and teach them how to ask these questions, then we can make sure they don't fall into the same cycle that we probably have fallen into, of being the time sucker and of having the bottleneck with all of the work on our plate and really feeling disconnected from what we're doing. The second question that is asked is, where will we play? Not just how do we win, but where are we going to play? Zooming in on the niche and where the resources are going to go. We really need to make sure, as the church and as business, we're not just, yeah, let's do it. We're going to have an extra sales thing, and we're going to do it for who? Who are we going after? If we have an Easter service, who are we going after right now? If we partner with these 5 businesses, who are we going after? And if we partner with these 5 businesses, how do we pull in this other niche so that we can impact our whole county? We need to clarify these things. So you'll find most people have never asked themselves these questions. The next one is, how will we win? What is the defendable difference where you will have to stand out in the crowd? How can you be different? How will you win? How are you any different? We have to ask ourselves this for Upper Conference every single year. We hold a conference. Can I tell you, there's probably 1,000 conferences in the United States. What makes our youth conference worth going to? What is our difference? How will we win? And how can we let people know what that difference is? We can ask the question. What capabilities must be in place is the next question. We're like, what are our strengths? What capabilities do we already have? What are we working on? We got to ask that. And the last one is, what management systems are required? Y'all, that is one of the best questions, is probably especially in the church world. What systems are in place that actually make sure this works? And you find that most people don't have any systems in place. You see, probably a lot of businesses don't have systems in place. But this question allows you to build it. And you'll find as we ask these questions more slowly, we'll say yes to less things. Because we'll find it goes back to probably that person's job, or we'll find the person whose job it actually is. Instead of someone coming with a, well, what do you want from me? Well, I want you to take this whole project and I need you to help right the ship. No. What's the winning aspiration of the project? Oh, you don't even know it. Go research it. Come back to me. Where will we play? You don't know that? Oh, go find the person who we're asking that. We need to make sure we ask questions. And as we ask questions, we can say yes more slowly, and we can say yes to less things. And guess what? We now get to teach people to ask the same questions. And that actually develops them. Now, number 7 is probably the best question that we can ask. It's a bookend question. Have you ever been to a class and you walked away like, man, what happened with that hour? I'm not even sure. Maybe you felt like that last week. But this is the question. What was most useful to you? You notice all these questions have you in them. It's always a personal question. What was most useful to you? What this does is it makes the person think back through the conversation and extract what they actually thought was important. This is the real development question right here. This is the bookend. This is the big win question. This is where they actually learn because it makes it personal. It gives you feedback and it reminds them how useful. But ready? People learn best not from hearing or doing something. They learn best when they can recall and reflect on what's happened. And this is forcing a recall and reflect moment. Not just, oh yeah, that was a good talk, thanks. No, this forces someone to ingrain it inside of their mind and inside of their heart because it's asking again. It's making someone mine through a conversation and mine through all of the data, mine through everything that you've just equipped them with and really figure out what it is that they've learned. And if you can just invest one small thing, you've had a giant win. What we need to do is make people find their own answers. And that's what this whole process is doing, is it's making people look through and find their own answers to the questions that they have. What you've done is you've eradicated yourself from being the savior. You've eradicated yourself from doing more work. You've spent 10 to 15 minutes through 7 questions, and you've forced development inside of someone in your organization. And when we can force development, everything rises. That question, what was most useful to you? And guess what? This question is really useful to us too. So in most organizations, there's a review. If you're a manager, there's a manager review that a lot of peers are, they answer this. Who you're leading will answer and give a manager review. That's not in many churches, but in the corporate world, that's a lot. Guess what? When they ask this question, was your manager useful to you? You've already asked that question probably 48 times in the last 60 days. What was most useful to you? And now they can recall all of the conversations like, yeah, they were very useful. I learned this, I learned this, I learned this, I learned this. So you've set yourself up by developing. And the recall and reflect is one of the gigantic wins. When you take time and effort to piece information together and find the answer yourself, the neural pathways in your brain are reinforced differently and the learning is retained much better. They've done research on the brain, and what I tell you isn't what you'll remember. What you search through your brain through and enforce by recall and reflect is what you've actually learned. So out of 60 minutes, you might learn 2 or 3 things, and that's what you actually take and start to process in your head. And that's the goal, is to make people search through their brain and figure out what you told them that actually mattered, what you told them that actually demanded them to grow and ingrain inside of their head by recalling what it was. That's why it's more effective to get someone to reflect on conversation and extract what's important to them. It gives them, then to give them a piece of direct advice. Look, even Bible. Someone can preach to you the same message 10 times, but if you hear it from the Lord, it's going to be more ingrained in your heart. It's the same concept. We're trying to find that answer inside of them, and they'll feel like a genius. You win because they've been developed. Now, some tips inside of all of this, and this is all from the book. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm 27. I don't know if any 27-year-old can be an expert in many things. But he gives some the author gives some tips. Ready? Number 1, he says, keep it simple. It should be done in a daily informal process in 10 minutes or less. Coaching and developing. These questions we can plow through in about 10 minutes. And once you start to ingrain them into your life, it's a simple conversation piece. And can I tell you, it's difficult? This is not easy. I've been getting to like question number 2 and 3, and that's about it. Because we're so used to just giving answers. That's why you have the position you're in, probably because you gave a lot of good answers in the past. But if you can just practice and keep it simple, make it a daily thing for you. But when you sit down, like, we're going to have daily 1-hour coaching and development. Yeah, that's daunting. Guess what happens? After about the first 3 weeks of it, everyone's now doing work on their other projects that you're taking time away from. Mm-hmm. But if you can go slide your chair up next to somebody that's on your team, say, hey, what's going on? What's on your mind? Oh, well, I'm just really struggling with this project. Oh, all right. Tell me more about that. What else? What's going on with it? Oh, blah, 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 blah. And you start to nail through this process of questions. You can help them find the answers and develop them to find the answers on their own even the next time. The informal, the author says the informal questioning is one of the best ways to develop people. And it doesn't take you 6 hours. The next tip is ask one question at a time. Don't give them all 7 questions on a sheet. That's kind of weird. Don't give them all 7 questions at once. Just take your time. And maybe in that 10 minutes, you might only get through the first 4 questions, but you started to get them thinking. But ask one question at a time. Go slow. It's okay. Slow is good. Slow is not a bad pace all the time. Slow and steady. Slow and steady. Who was it? John Wooden, who was a basketball coach for UCLA. I believe they won like 8 or 10 championships in a row. I mean, the guy's a genius. He was a coach, and he developed young people. If you work with young people, he's got a phenomenal book. It's called Wooden on Leadership. Phenomenal. But he used to say it like this. He said, be quick, but don't hurry. Be quick, but don't hurry. Fast enough that you accomplish what you need to, but not so fast that you mess everything up on the way. Be quick, but don't hurry. I love that quote from John Wooden. Mm-hmm. The third tip the author gives is this. He said, get comfortable with silence. Maybe you ask a question, and what else? You're making somebody think. And 5 seconds might feel like 5 hours, but our interjection ruins our opportunity to develop. Ask it, and then lean in, and just wait. It's okay. The world will not end. Don't pull out your phone when you ask it and start scrolling through social media. Lean in with your body posture, showing that you're interested in the conversation and you're listening, and give them an opportunity to think through whatever's going on in their mind and come up with what else they're trying to figure out. It's really like you might screw up a valuable answer. You might screw up a valuable answer by giving your own, and you don't even know the full issue at hand yet. Number 4 is be direct. If you know what question to ask, don't frame it or set it up. Just ask the question. Just don't be a jerk, but just ask the question. You don't have to ask 3 setup questions. No, just ask the dang question. Just do it. Just shoot your shot. Just go. Number 5, don't ask rhetorical questions or present ideas and advice in the form of a question. Have you considered? You just gave an answer. Or what if you ... fill in the blank with whatever you think is right. If you have a piece of advice, offer it as an idea rather than mask it as a question. The goal is not to ask or to give any ideas. Sometimes you'll need to. But if you need to, don't ask it as a question. You've already asked 7. Just tell them that you have an idea. And then ask them what's on their mind about that idea. And then ask them what else. And then start mining with the 5 other questions you have. Number 6 is use questions starting with what. Several management gurus have advised using why questions to diagnose issues. But there's an author, this author, Stanier, advises against that in coaching, since the other party may feel like he or she is being interrogated and get defensive. Your goal is not to solve the problem for them. Instead, start your questions with what. When we start with, well, why are you thinking about that? Why is that your next question? Why would that be your solution? It feels like an interrogation. We're still asking you, but by simply asking what, it's not interrogation anymore. It's just mining through their emotions in their brain. We don't want people to feel like they're being attacked. Many people already feel like they shouldn't share out loud what they're going through or what they're struggling with because they'll be seen as weak. So they're already probably going to be defensive. So to help disarm that defensive nature in the workforce or even in your volunteers at church, a great way to do that is to stop asking why and start asking what, but make it personal at the end. If you've asked a question, shut out other internal dialogues and distractions and genuinely listen to what the other person has to say. One of the most underrated leadership qualities is being a good listener. I think Pastor Spencer taught about that before, is the value of being a good listener. And number 8, the last tip is acknowledge the response you get before moving to the next question. An acknowledgement could be something as simple as that's great, but acknowledge it before moving on, because if you don't acknowledge it, then they're going to assume that you didn't listen. If you didn't listen, why should I keep talking? You clearly don't care about me. I mean, we obviously care about people. That's why we're trying to develop them. So let's let people know that we care. This isn't like 6 hacks to being a millionaire. Like, that's not our motive. Our motive is to equip people to be what God has called them to be and to do what God has called them to do, whether in the ministry or whether in business or in both. And if that's the goal, then we need to actually acknowledge those people that we're trying to lead. Now, the issue is we already have some pretty bad habits, and we're already really good at giving the answers we think are great. And we have to change those habits if we're ever going to do something different. We're going to have all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't actually change our habit of giving the answer, then we can have it and never change it, even if we know that's the right thing to do. It is like we have to be really purposed in this. Now, we've all seen online that it takes 21 days to change a habit. Now, do you think that's truth or a myth?
Truth.
Two truths? A myth? Anybody else? Truth? If you think it's a truth, raise your hand. If you're online, tell us what you think it is. If you think it's a truth, go and put your hand up. It's all right. There's not a penalty for being wrong. All right, 3 people said it's a truth in the room. The rest of us said it's a myth. Guess what? That's a myth that was started on the internet. There's no science behind that as a truth.
I heard that long before.
Well, someone started the myth. But there's no science that supports it. It's a good idea. It really is a good idea. And if you practice something that long, you'll see some change. But what they've actually done is they've done research on how to change a habit. And I want to share that with you, because if we're going to develop people, then we need to change our habits and what we're currently doing. So in order to change our habits, he's given 5 components to bringing real change. Number 1, we need a reason for change. Which is pretty simple, right? We need our why. Simon Sinek teaches it like this: start with why. If you've never heard of that concept of start with why, go ahead and look up the TED Talk, Simon Sinek, Start with Why. He's got a book on it, but the TED Talk is the truncated version. It's like 15 minutes. I saved you a lot of time. Start with why. What is your why? Why do you want to change giving advice and starting to develop people? Probably because you want to be a great leader. We need our own personal why, though. So let me ask you this. Why do you want to change? Why do you want to start asking questions instead of giving all the ideas? That's actually going to be part of your homework. Question number 1, what's your why? Not your why in life, but what is your why for changing your habit of giving answers and solutions to asking questions? And I'm even going to try to jack the homework money. I got Christmas around the corner, so I'm going to try to jack that. I'll tell you in a minute.
Can you say that in a different way?
Yeah. What is your reason for change?
Oh.
What is your why? What is your reason for changing? The second component to changing a habit is we need to figure out what the trigger is of the old habit. So what is the trigger of the old habit? What makes you do this? What's crazy is a Duke University study found that 45% of our actions are habits we've built. I'm going to guess that it's more than that. But what's the trigger for you doing that? And if we can define the trigger and habits as specifically as possible, it helps. Don't be generic. Well, I answer the question because, I don't know, I just feel like they're slow and they'll never get it. That's not the real trigger. Be specific as possible. Specific like this: location, time, people, emotional state, and what the immediate preceding action is. I'll go through that again, but let me give you an example of it. When Tom comes to me and says, I need help with a problem, that's the trigger. I feel important and immediately offer to solve the issue for him. That's the old behavior. When the trigger happens next time, I'll smile and ask him, what's on my mind? And that's your new behavior. But we need to know what triggers that. If I'm at the church and I give all the solutions, but at home I don't, okay, then identify that. Write that down. Maybe it's the time. Maybe it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're getting sleepy and you just don't want to give it extra effort. You've identified the time. Or it's 9 a.m. and you haven't had your coffee yet. A, you need to get free from addiction. But B, identify the time. Next one is people. You ever notice you treat people differently? Some people you're just like, no, here it is, go away. And other people you're willing to give the time to. Maybe it's the people. Maybe it's your emotional state. Maybe you're in a good mood. Awesome. But what are you when you're in a bad mood? The next one is the immediate preceding actions. What do you do next? And we need to find and identify that and create and define the new behavior. So not just what is the reason, but what's the trigger, and we need a new trigger. And this new habit that we form should take less than 60 seconds. This what used to trigger us, and boom, this is our action. All right, when we realize that our trigger's been set off, what is the new habit? What are we going to force ourselves to do now? What is different this time? What's the new behavior we've decided that we want to enact? And it should be short. It shouldn't be this long, drawn-out process. It should be short. And that leads us to the next one, number 3, the third component to a change. And what micro habit can I build in? And that's that 60 seconds or less. What is this micro habit? What is this thing I can start that leads to a new behavior? Maybe Tom comes to me and he asks, I need help with a problem. And our old habit is, yes, I'd love to help you. But our new habit is, I'm going to ask the first question, what's on your mind? That's short. That's way less than 60 seconds. That's like 6 seconds. Just build that into this is what I will do differently. But the next part component number 4 is what really makes this stick. How can I effectively practice this? We need a plan to effectively practice what our new behavior is going to be. It's actually called deep practice. And that's the art of practicing small chunks until perfection is reached. In Brazil, think about how many amazing soccer players they produce. In New York City, think Juilliard, how many amazing dancers they have. I think it's like Sweden, the amazing tennis players they have. All of these places have developed so many great people at certain things, but how have they done it? They've done it through what's called deep practice. And deep practice is really interesting. So imagine you want to be the next Serena Williams or Roger Federer. What they're saying you should do is you shouldn't go out and just practice your serve. What you should do is for 1,000 times or until it's perfect, you should just practice throwing the ball up for the first part of the serve. That's it. And then once you have that perfected, then start with your first step. And then once you throw the ball and you have your first step perfected, after thousands of opportunities of practice, then start your swing. Then worry about your follow-through. Then worry about where it's going to go. But it's called deep practice. Small chunks of a behavior until you perfected the total behavior. When you try to perfect something that is completely brand new to you, it's very easy to get discouraged. But when you perfect small parts of it, it's great to have little victories. You ever notice how many little victories lead to great success and great momentum? And they teach it in baseball. Don't try to swing for a home run every time. Hit your singles and doubles. We need base runners. Look, in life, you need base runners. You need small wins so you can keep the whole thing moving. That way, when you have a strikeout, guess what? It's okay. There's still other wins you've had. When you miss something, it's okay. You still have better momentum than you have loss. We need to celebrate the successes we have by having deep practice in these things. So if your new habit is, I'm going to ask the first question, just literally start with your mindset. Okay, when Tom comes to me and says, I need help, I'm not going to say, I'd love to help you. Identify what is in your mind that you want to be a rescuer. Identify, okay, I'm not going to be the rescuer this time, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to even change my mind. I'm going to develop Tom. That's the first thing. I'm just going to tell myself every time, I'm going to develop Tom. I'm going to develop Tom. I'm going to develop Tom. And once you've decided and convinced yourself and perfected the fact that you're going to develop Tom, guess what you get to do next? You get to ask the first question. What's on your mind? Deep practice is one of the greatest ways to change a habit. And then the last part is, what's my plan? What am I going to do long term? These 5 things. What's my reason for change? What's my trigger? What micro habit can I build? How can I effectively practice this? And what's my overall plan? So that is your homework for next week. What is my reason for change? You get to answer these. What is the trigger for the old habit? What micro habit can I build in? How can I effectively practice this? And what is my plan? And if we do that, we can actually start to see real change in our life. And I want you to I don't want you to do this with like anything in your life. I want you can use this model for anything in your life for change. But I really want you to look at this in how you help coach and develop people. Really specific to what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. What is my reason for change? Man, mine is I want to develop people. So I don't want to be the stopgate. I don't want to be the reason people can't go higher. I don't want to be the lid. If I am a lid, I want to be the highest lid that they can find. What's my trigger for the old habit? I love helping people. I think I have good ideas. The more I'm around smarter people, the more I realize I don't have that many great ideas. What micro habit can I build in? How can I effectively practice this? And what's my plan? You guys can put those 5 things together and start implementing these questions. And I promise the questions aren't going to always be easy to ask people. It's not always easy once you get to question number 3 and you're normally always giving the answers and you give great answers. It's not easy to arrest yourself at all times, but don't beat yourself up when you screw up and give the answer. Just try to get better the next time. Go back and review. Remember what your reason is. Remember why you don't want that old habit. Remember why you're in this. And just start building it in as a habit. And what you'll find is people around you are going to develop. They're going to stop coming to you with every little need that they have. They're going to stop asking you for all the answers. You're going to stop getting all this extra work that isn't even on your job description. And you're going to start to feel connected to what you deeply care about and what's actually valuable to you. And when you're deeply connected to the work you're at, guess what? You're going to do it with excellence. And that's the goal. Keep us free. Keep people developing so we can see an increase in production on every single level. And that's what I've started learning about asking questions and how to develop people with questions. Does anybody have any questions with the remaining 8 minutes? Before I do that, once you think about your questions, what's on your mind? But before I let you answer what's on your mind, I need to let you know that if you didn't do your homework last week, Pastor Spencer's PayPal is pastorspencer@me.com. PASTORSPENCER @me.com. And it's $20, $25 fee for not doing your homework. Your homework this week is to answer the 5 questions in context of the teaching for the last 2 weeks. If you don't do your homework next week, you can send it to pastorspencer@me.com. And if he feels loved, he'll bless me with some of your homework fees. But does anybody have any questions about this?
Are the slides proprietary?
I made them today.
Okay. Can you email them to me?
I'll finish last week's, and I'll send them to you. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This anybody online as well? I'll hop over there. Oh, I lied. I'm sorry, guys. The PayPal is pastorspencer@gmail.com, not at me.com. Pastor's watching. Awesome. Questions online. Please, Julia, I'm going to screenshot this and send it to your kids. All right, Grace, you had something?
Yes. So say you see a problem in somebody's life, but you want them to get the own revelation that it's a problem in their life, but you don't just come up to them and say, what's on your mind? So how does that look if you want to get into these questions for them to have that revelation, but you can't start with that?
Honestly, I would start with the issue of like, hey, I've noticed that every Sunday morning you're 30 minutes late and you have a bad attitude. What's on your mind? What's going on with that? And just kind of start asking the questions through that process. Of like, I love you and I've noticed this and it concerns me because I really do know where your heart is, but this is how it's perceived by everybody. What's on your mind? What do you think about that?
Wait for some silence there.
Yeah, and then wait for the silence because you're like, oh my gosh, what a jerk. But then they're going to flow through and like, wow, they're actually not a jerk. They're saying it because they care. Do I really have a bad attitude every single Sunday morning? And I'm 30 minutes late? Wow. I have been really short with Grace every time I've seen her. Huh. Why do I do that? Maybe it's because I'm running late because I wake up late. Huh. And then they'll start going through that. And like they're going through that in their head. I just spoke out loud for like 10 minutes or for like 10 seconds. That's a long time for silence. That's terrifying. So wait for the silence. Wait it out. And then guess what you get to ask them? Well, and then they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm running late. Well, what else? Is there anything else with it? Well, I don't know, I have a really hard time sleeping Saturday nights for some reason. Maybe find out it's like a spiritual thing. Let's just start mining for that. Yeah, maybe they're like, maybe they're watching Netflix till 2 a.m. and you can help build in some discipline. Those are good, Grace. Those are phenomenal questions. Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Yes, a comment.
I just want to comment about the way these questions are formed. I think is brilliant because my tendency has always been to say, if I know a behavior, to say, why is this happening? And they don't know. Because you put them on the spot with the word why, they're going to tell you they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But when you ask it in that way, what is on your mind, then it forces them to look at why without asking why.
Yeah, and then you're not a big jerk.
Right. And because when you come up with why is this happening, they immediately feel threatened, and that's why they shut down and do the I don't know. It's an amazing process. I wish I'd had it when I was raising teenagers.
Yeah.
Because these questions are brilliantly worded for developing teenage children or even preteen children.
Yeah, I'm going to give these questions to my small group leaders because they really are phenomenal. You know what else I saw is great questions for your teenagers or your smaller children going to school? Instead of asking, how was your day at school? You're not going to get an answer for that. They said to start asking these questions, say, what was the highlight of your day? And what was the low point of your day? And then the third question, where did you see Jesus today? Like, in what situation? Where did you see Jesus today? It's just really like, it's always the questions. There's a man named, oh my goodness, he wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting his name. He did a podcast called The Tribe of Mentors. They're all pretty short, but in one of his podcasts, he actually went through and talked about the questions that he asks and how he's formulated questions over the last 10, 20 years. And it's really, really powerful. The questions he asks, instead of asking, what's your favorite book? He'll ask people, what book have you gifted the most in the last 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Because people are like, well, I don't know what my favorite book is. But the book that's made the greatest impact in people is the book that they've probably shared within the last 6 months to a year the most. It's just the questions that you ask. You can go right on to your podcast format. I don't know what Google has because I don't know who uses Google anymore. But if you have Apple, it's just the podcast app. Just type in Tribe of Mentors. Obviously, I'm not endorsing any of the language that they use, but the questions he asks in one of the podcasts actually talks about why he asks what questions. It's phenomenal, very phenomenal. Anything else before we end?
Not for nothing, but the whole why versus what thing would be great marriage counseling.
Yeah, why versus what? Great marriage counseling. Huge point. Yes.
I just wanted to add one more comment about what you said about the kids in school, because I went through that. And if you ask what was the highlight, they'll say lunch. And if you ask,
that's my highlight every day when I'm an adult.
Math class.
Nope.
So I implemented specific questions about each class. What did you learn about in math today? What did you learn about in English or history? I would only pick one class.
Yeah.
But at least it got them talking, and you didn't get the lameness answers.
How much time do I have left? Oh, it's 1 o'clock. Pastor always gives like 10 minutes. Go ahead, Brandon.
Some I read upon one time was not practice until you make perfect. It says practice until you can't get it wrong.
That's good.
I thought that was beautiful.
That's great for deep practice. Practice until you don't get it wrong. Okay, I have to ask you guys the learning question. What was most useful to you out of these last 2 weeks? That's actually question number 6 for your homework. If you signed off already, you win. You're lucky. But question number 6 is, what was most useful to you? Go ahead, Carrie.
Realizing that I'm a rescuer, like hardcore. It explains so much in my life. And learning to say yes slowly. Those are literally the 2 things that I'm going to go write down on my wall at home.
That's cool.
so that I can see it every day.
That's cool. My friend, Pastor Alan Micheal, right outside of Atlanta, preaches a message about maturity in the body, that there's high chairs. I'm actually going to steal it this month for youth group. Not the message, but the concept that there's high chairs, there's kids tables, and then there's adult tables. And our job as ministers and business people is to get people to sit at the adult table. And how to do that. I'm sorry. What was most useful for you or to you? It's everybody. So Will, what was most useful to you? You guys can start running through your mind real quick, recalling and reflecting what you've learned so you can implement them.
I would say last week, case starter question, it allows me to stop and reflect on what's actually being asked.
It's good.
And also being able to identify when people are asking it in a different way.
Nice. And the cool thing is you can use all this. You're a manager. He's one of the top managers at Walmart. So the more he does this, I bet the more he develops, and I bet you the more we'll running that ship. Maybe the future DM of district manager of Walmart. You're looking at him right there, William D. Villanueva. All right, guys. Anybody else want to throw it out, or I'm just gonna start calling on people? Sam, go ahead. Online, please share as well.
So like I've always had the desire to like, you know, develop and lead, and as I'm starting to see like a level in life where like more people are beginning to like come to me, I realize that I really don't know how to do it. And like this actually like gives you that process step by step, how to actually develop and not just give what's on your mind, but actually listening.
Awesome. Yeah. What was most useful to you? Go ahead,
I
Brittany.
mean, I haven't done it yet, but I feel like defining the trigger and the habits and developing a plan of what to do when you are triggered or in those specific situations.
You know what's crazy? In that emotional intelligence test, I actually found that it said, and I don't agree with it. I took it like during a meeting. But it said that I have an issue with rumination, which is thinking and dwelling on negative things too long. Actually, I mull things a lot, so I've like started developing a plan to not have that anymore, because I like to mull things. Why did this happen? How could it go differently? What is this? What is this? What is this? Not that it like I get super depressed or down about it, but like I really try to figure everything out, and it's not healthy. So developing a plan for those things is difficult sometimes. It's fun though. Jen?
So in my leadership experience, we focused on the 5 whys. Everything we investigated was why, then take it to the next level, why. So the why versus what is a huge aha moment for me, because I never realized the position we were putting employees in as the HR manager saying, okay, why? And then it was just, you kept drilling them till you got to a certain level.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I got Kevin left. I got Stacy left. We got Buddy, Pastor Aaron, Pastor Obi. Miss Carla, you had your hand up already. You already.
The most useful so far to me.
Yep.
Is the basic universal needs.
That was cool, wasn't it?
Recognizing that in myself and other people.
Yeah, that was really cool.
I guess what was most useful for me is like just the questions, because you can get into the habit of when people come like ask you for advice, just to give out your straight out answer. And then like one thing I noticed is that you'll give them the answer and then they'll come back later and ask you again about the same thing, and you're like, I just gave you an answer. So it's good for having them to find it out themselves, so you don't have to rely on you for things.
Questions are a good self-defense. They really are. Stop asking me the same thing 100 times. You figure it out. Here's the questions to help you figure it out.
And to piggyback on that, if you give someone the answer and they don't like the answer, then that doesn't really solve their problem.
Sure.
But if you give them the opportunity to find their own answer, then they're more likely to use it.
It's 100% true.
I was kind of thinking about it. Could you switch the order of the questions a little bit?
Yeah, he does. He did say it's not like, it's like discipleship. There's not a perfect way, but there's definitely a model.
I was sitting there like, well, if you come up with a plan, like you wouldn't want to put that after effectively practicing it. So
yeah,
if you have a plan, then you can do so.
Yeah. All right, Stacy, Kevin.
I'd say overcoming silence. Silence is huge for me.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Kevin, Pastor Obi, and then you're free. They're holding you hostage, guys.
I think the asking, what is the reason we're doing this, and asking the whys is important, because what happens in those moments is you start uncovering sacred cows a lot of times. Like, we've always done it this way because this is the way we've done it, even though there's 10 better ways to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we've never done it that way before. So I think that's one takeaway that I think all of us can just keep within our roles, any role you have, is asking what is the reason why we're doing it, or why have we always done it this way when this is another alternative that can produce great results.
Yeah. Pastor Obi and Evo, then we're free.
I think it's imperative that we not only ask why and what, but what is that payoff? And I think that part of coaching is that, okay, you know the why, you know the what, but what is that impact going to be? And oftentimes people don't think about that. In business, you do, and that's kind of where they're wired to think, and it's called ROI. What is my return on this investment? If you cannot justify that return, I don't care how churchy it sounds, I don't care how good it makes you feel, if there's no return, then you may want to reconsider it, because every second here is kingdom money. If there's no return, I'll drop it.
It's true. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you next week. Also, check out Empower Summit. I think it's empoweringpastors.com. I would love to have you here. I believe the dates are March 18th, 19th, and 20th. And I promise you, you need to be here. Bishop Rick Thomas, Pastor Jim Raleigh, Alvin Slaughter doing worship. It is a life change, and it's not just for ministry, it's also for business leaders. So we'd love to have you there. Check out the website real quick, and have a phenomenal day.